They say the scariest moments in life don't happen when you're in danger, but when you realize everyone's looking at you and you have to decide who you're going to be. That's what hit me, right there in that freezing Manhattan courtroom when the judge barked, "Where's your lawyer, Mr. Grant?" And every head turned except the one belonging to the billionaire himself, Michael Grant, who looked like a statue about to shatter. No one expected a maid to raise her hand that morning. Not in a room this rich with suits and hungry with cameras. But I guess that's the problem with people like them. They never notice the help until the help refuses to be invisible. Yeah, that happened. I was Rachel Evans, the woman scrubbing antique bookshelves in Grant's penthouse for the last 8 months, blending into the marble and velvet like a piece of forgotten furniture. But what nobody knew was I'd spent every late night listening in on legal meetings, filing away contracts like puzzle pieces in my mind, trying not to think about the law degree I dropped when my mom got sick and my whole life went sideways. Let me back up a sec. Years ago, I had my own legal consulting gig in Jersey. I was going somewhere, you know? Then cancer hit, debt piled up. I traded the courtroom for a mop, thinking it'd be temporary. Now here I was, heart pounding, hands shaking, watching Michael's world collapse while the judge's gavel slammed. "If your attorney does not appear in 5 minutes, we will proceed without a defense." That echo carried across the marble, and Lauren Mitchell, the plaintiff's lawyer, she was practically licking her lips, thinking it was all over. I could have kept my head down. God knows I wanted to. But sometimes you just have to stand up, even if you're the only one who believes you should. "Your Honor, may I speak?" I barely got the words out, but when I did, every journalist, every staffer, every critic in that courtroom turned to stare. Lauren snickered. "Oh, how charming." The maid wants to object. The judge just looked at me, sharp-eyed and tired, and asked if I had any legal background. Columbia law, 2 years. I had to leave for personal reasons. I managed standing a little taller. I knew this case, every line, every loophole. I'd seen it all unfold. And now, for 5 insane minutes, the judge agreed to let me defend Michael Grant. Michael just stared at me, blue eyes narrowed, almost like he was seeing me for the first time. And that's when I realized sometimes you don't get to choose your moment. Sometimes the moment chooses you, and you have to either run from it or step up and own it. I stepped up. I laid out the truth. This lawsuit wasn't what it seemed. I had proof the so-called victims, Michael's former executives, were orchestrating a long con, funneling assets out of his company, fabricating delays, engineering the whole collapse so they could sue for millions. The whole room gasped. Suddenly, I wasn't just the maid anymore, I was the storm, and for once they had to listen. But let's not kid ourselves, becoming a hero in the courtroom doesn't make you one at home. The next morning, the tabloids exploded. Billionaire's maid defends him in court. The kitchen staff went cold on me. "Look who thinks she's a lawyer now," Linda the cook muttered, not even meeting my eyes. Teresa, the other maid, just shook her head, her words sharper than any side. "A little more than cleaning, huh?" It hurt worse than I thought it would, but I just kept moving, head down, until Michael stopped me in the marble hallway. He looked different, human. "Why'd you do it?" he asked. "Because it was right," I said, even though my knees were still shaking. We talked in his study, surrounded by more leather and glass than I'd ever seen, overlooking Central Park. He handed me a thick file of backup notes, and for a second, I could tell he didn't see a maid at all, saw someone who'd been paying attention, who remembered things even he'd missed. "You're a lawyer, at least to me," he said. For a minute there, I almost believed him. Would you have done it, knowing everyone would laugh at you? Next morning, I stared in the mirror and realized I wasn't just invisible anymore. Downstairs, staff kept their distance, but Michael was waiting, suit pressed, eyes stormy, asking only, "You ready?" I nodded, even though my heart was beating loud enough to drown out the traffic below. At the courthouse, the media sharks were out for blood. "Miss Evans, are you really representing Mr. Grant? Is this just a stunt?" But Michael put his hand on my back and whispered, "Ignore them. You already proved more than any of them ever will." Inside, Lauren Mitchell was ready to pounce, but this time I had a folder that would blow the whole case open. I laid out a chain of internal emails between the plaintiffs and rival firms dated before the alleged breach, showing coordinated sabotage. I brought up bank transfers from shell companies, payments routed to rig inspections, the whole 9 yards. The judge was floored. Lauren turned white, and the room fell into chaos. And then came the twist nobody saw coming. One of my old clients, assistant to one of the plaintiffs, reached out after seeing my name in the news, handed me every Fingermail's audio records. That's how I broke the case wide open. Yeah, sometimes it's who you know. Court was adjourned for review, but the storm outside was just as wild. Reporters mobbed us, but Michael just kept asking, "How did you find all that?" All I could say was, I paid attention even when nobody thought I mattered. Back at the mansion, the Cold War continued, but as I scrolled through my phone that night, messages started pouring in. Women, students, strangers, saying I gave them hope, that maybe they mattered too. I cried, not out of sadness, but relief. For once, I'd done something real. 3 days later, we were back in that grand courtroom. This time, when the judge called my name, nobody laughed. Michael's whole future rested on what I was about to say. I handed over a USB drive audio recordings of the plaintiffs plotting to sabotage their own company. When the tape played, you could hear them mocking me, calling me just a maid, as if that ever stopped anyone with guts. When the last recording finished, I offered up more bank records, proof the original attorney was paid off to disappear before trial. The judge was done. He dismissed all charges, ordered a criminal investigation against the plaintiffs, and just like that, I wasn't invisible anymore. Michael was cleared, and the media had a new obsession. Rachel Evans, will you go back to law school? Will you open your own firm? Michael stood beside me on the courthouse steps and said, "Ask her yourself." For the first time in my life, I spoke not for someone else, but for me. If you've ever been told you don't belong somewhere, remember this moment. Sometimes all it takes is one voice. Back at the mansion, Teresa apologized. Linda made coffee. Michael met me in his study and finally told the truth. Known who I was all along, hired me because he thought I might come in handy if things got bad. At first it stung, but he admitted he needed me, not just for court, but because I saw what others missed. He offered me a scholarship to finish law school, asked me to run a new legal foundation for women like women with no voice. I turned him down for the romance, but not for the cause. I went back to Columbia, graduated with honors, ran the foundation, helped hundreds of women find justice. Michael and I stayed close. Sometimes we'd talk late into the night, but what we had was deeper than love. It was mutual respect between two people who saw each other, even when the world looked away. I didn't need a fairy tale ending. I built something better, a life I chose. So let me ask you, do you think I made the right call, walking away from romance to follow my purpose? Would you have picked the foundation or chosen a different path? If my story meant something to you, drop a 100 in the comments, tell us where you're from, and share this with someone who needs to remember. Courage doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears a maid's uniform.